functions.php. This, copy and paste. It's amazing how much web design is just copying and pasting things. Okay, so this, what this is doing is typically when you add something to a functions PHP file, it's usually adding functionality to the actual dashboard. A lot of times what you put in here doesn't show up on the website, it shows up in the dashboard. And that's what we're doing. We're basically adding the functionality to have a theme inside our dashboard. If we go in here right now to appearance, you notice there's no menu option in here. If you ever installed a WordPress theme, you'll notice there's a menu option. We don't have it yet. That's what we're adding right now with this code. And we're going to add two different menu locations, primary and footer. We're going to hit save, and hopefully that's going to work.
Is the primary the one that'll show up at the top?
Yeah, primary is going to show up wherever we put this code.
Nice.
So it makes sense to name it where you're going to put it, just for your own sanity's sake. But you technically could name it anything you want. But yeah, wherever we put this code, the primary menu is going to show up. And you can see after I refresh that now menus is an option in here. And again, we haven't created any pages yet, so we're going to do that quick. We're just going to, I guess we do have a sample page. We're going to add another one. And let's create contact. And we'll go back into menus. Okay, so we're going to create our menu. We're just going to call it, typically it's main menu is what most people call it, but again, call it whatever you want. It doesn't actually, the words main menu don't show up on the website anymore, so it doesn't matter. And once we've created it, we can choose where it's going to go. This primary and footer, you'll recognize that is what we put here. All right, and we can have more, we can have less. I've seen themes that have 6 different places you could stick a menu, but typically you have one primary and you also maybe want to stick a menu in the footer. That's what's showing up in here. So we're going to choose primary, and we're going to come over here and we're going to add these 3 pages that we have to the menu. Save it.
Do you get to choose what order they go in?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was thinking.
Oh, you're fine. These work. Okay. I screwed something up somewhere. But to answer your question, yeah, you can drag these around.
Oh, okay.
And if you nest it underneath, it'll show up as a submenu underneath that item. Let's see if I can figure out what I did wrong. Good little troubleshooting. I can read here. Huh. WP nav menu. I don't see any typos.
Could you move the one that's in 31 up?
No, that wouldn't. These spaces don't mean anything.
Oh, okay.
Highlight the black bar really quickly.
What?
What'd you say now?
Highlight the black bar.
Oh, yeah, maybe they're there, but
Nope. So it's not being printed.
okay. Oh, I think I see it. Oh, maybe not. PHP. Oh, is it this? I bet this needs a question mark here. PHP. Stupid web design. There it is. All right. So we got a couple of menu items here. Not sure why only 2 things are showing up, but honestly, I don't care at this point.
Well, you made one a sub. You had 3, and then you made
one a sub. Oh, you're right. I did stick
item.
one underneath.
So
that's probably not.
I don't know, I think it was under the one that was blocked.
Yep, let's put that back on its own. Okay, there we go. So now we can go to these pages, and they all look the same still because WordPress is still looking at index.html or .php for everything. So we haven't, we'll fix that later, but we do still technically have a working menu even though every page looks exactly the same. And this should take us back to the main, yep. So all that stuff is working. And we can now go in and create more pages and add them to the menu without having to do any code. It's just all WordPress dashboard at that point. So now that we've got the menu working, we are going to take this, all this code here is the article. It's this stuff, the blog posts. And it's basically just the same thing copied 3 times to make it look like a real blog. But we don't want that. We want an actual blog so that when we go to our dashboard and we go to posts and we create a new post, it'll automatically show up on our blog. And that is a fun little WordPress thing that they call the post loop. So this is a whole lot of content. So first of all, I'm going to delete 2 of these 3 posts. Get those out of here. And I'm just going to shorten this post down because we don't need all this. Get out of here. Okay, and we're just going to kind of do what we've been doing, go through one line at a time and WordPressify it. So similar to how up here we use blog info name to plug the name of the entire website in, we can do a similar thing to pull the name of the posts. So the first thing we do is a little if statement. If you're familiar with programming, it's pretty common amongst all programming languages. We're going to actually just delete. We're going to stick it right here. This says, if you can't read it, it says if have posts. What that's doing is it's looking at the database and it's seeing if there's any posts. And if there are, it's going to do stuff. And what it's going to do is basically just display them all for our viewing pleasure. This is just a while loop, which this actually loops. This just checks to see if there are any posts, and if there are, this while loop actually loops through every post in the database and gets all the information we want and displays it on the website. That one little line of code does all that. Instead of you going in and hard coding every new blog post, you just have to add it in the WordPress dashboard, and this one little line of code displays it all for you. It's pretty slick. We can go ahead and leave article class the same, but instead of blog post 1, we're going to change that because this is WordPress. PHP the title. That's creative, right? What does that do? Well, I bet it displays the title of our post. And we can stick it in this H2, you can make it H3, whatever you want, any sort of styling is fine. But wherever you stick this, it's going to show the title of the blog post. This metadata, which tells you when it was posted and who posted it, that's also something that we can make dynamic. We don't want to have to go in and put that in there manually for every single blog post. So let's separate this out a little bit. Posted at 11 on May 9th by admin. That's your default name when you create a WordPress site. You can also change that in settings if you want. So instead of this date here, we're going to get the WordPress version of it, which is actually not even WordPress specific. This is just general PHP. I don't understand it. It looks very, very strange. You'll see here. This FJ, YG, that's all weird PHP code for how you want to display the date. And you can look it up at php.net and search for date code, and it'll show you all the different ways you can format it. If you want it to show time first and then date, or date and time, or if you want it to spell out February, or you want it to just say 02, all that kind of stuff, you can look it up and stick that in there. But now what this is doing is, of course, as soon as you hit in your WordPress dashboard, publish, it's going to record the time and date and who publish it, and it's going to automatically save that in the database, and this line of code is going to pull that info. And then admin, that's the author. There's another very clever little PHP code for that called the author. We try to make this as easy for us as possible. By the author. So again, it's going to save the, WordPress will save the name of who published that article in the database, and this line of code is going to pull that information. And then this is the content of the post, right? All this random Latin here. We're going to WordPressify that as well. We're going to use, anybody have any guess what this one's called?
Post?
The content.
Oh. Oops.
So you'll notice this is a very, very small amount of code. But this is going to display, if you have 500 blog posts and saved in your database, this code is going to loop through every single one, and it's going to pick the title, it's going to pick when it was posted, it's going to pick who posted it, and it's going to grab the content, and it's going to display it, one right after the other for every single blog post in your database.
So basically, in layman's terms, for the simpleton like myself, you took some other data to template that.
Right.
You just work in kind of, you had to transfer it. So if me, I'm on a Wix or something, and I want to do that, all I have to do is cut and paste and move it over and create the template. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that, though.
No, I'm just, you know, if I was to pull up, if I had
Sure.
blog posts and stuff and I wanted to redo something.
Yeah, if you were moving from Wix to WordPress, you would just find a theme that you like, WordPress theme, and you wouldn't go through all this hassle.
Oh, well, okay.
But this is just kind of showing you how WordPress works in the back end a little bit and some of the benefits. Because if you just download a theme, you don't have to do any of this stuff we're doing
okay.
here, right? This is all, you know, this is what the poor theme developer had to do so that your life could be easy, and you can just go into WordPress dashboard and never have to look at this stuff.
I don't know, I thought that was kind of fun.
So I'm going to save this, and we're going to go see what our website looks like now. Ah, I broke it. That's always fun. Let's see if we can figure out why I broke it. We got a div. PHP wall hat post. Post. Oh, I didn't end my if statement. So up here, I didn't end my loop either. Oh, I might not have done that. Let's save that, see what happens. It still broke. Okay. So what this is supposed to do is this little thing. So up here it said if have posts. That checks the database to see if there's any posts. If there's not, it outputs sorry, no posts. That's all this little line's doing.
What's the X mean over on the left-hand side next to 53?
That means that he thinks there's a problem with the code. Oh yeah, I need to end the while loop. So this ended the if statement. This PHP end if. And I need to end the while loop. And I think that's as easy as PHP end while.
Oh.
That's okay. The loop, that's what they call it. The loop. It's such an integral part of a WordPress website. If have posts, while have posts, the post, da-da-da, and if PHP end while.
closing bracket, isn't it?
Yeah, it looks like they just ended it right in here, huh? Oh. PHP if and else.
Could you just use that one?
If. Yeah, probably. PHP the content. Ah, here we go. End while. Oh. You don't need to know PHP if you know how to copy and paste correctly. Still broke.
Mm.
Well, that's not the worst thing in the world because this was pretty much the end of my, this is as far as I had gotten anyways. I wanted to see those posts work though. You got everything else to WordPressify. Oh, you know what? They ended the while loop after the else, right? Yeah, they ended the if statement way up here. Oh, but there's another if. That's that one. Let's just try copying this guy over, see what happens. Oh yeah, I didn't end the else either. Maybe that's what the problem is. Dang it.
The fact that you're not throwing shit really, I'm really admiring you right now.
If this is a real website, I'd probably be throwing stuff right now. Let's see what happens if I steal their code. All right, so again, copying and pasting is important. So you'll notice our posts went away, right? We had those 3 long posts. That's because they were just hard-coded right into the index file. No more. Now we see hello world. Why do we see that? Well, that's because when you go into your WordPress dashboard, you go to posts, it always creates a dummy post for you called hello world. Let's create a new post called WordPress. Can't type. Makes me cry. Publish. And there it is. Now you notice how it automatically does some things for us. First of all, it automatically put it to the top. If you were hard coding a blog in HTML, I mean, you'd have to go in there and put your new blog on the top, and you'd have to put in, just hard code all this stuff, but it put in the date, the time, that I put in my name there, James. It even put it in a category, which I didn't give it a category, so it says uncategorized. But it did all that stuff automatically, which makes it 1,000 times easier for you to blog and easier for your clients. They just go in, they hit new post, they type whatever they're feeling about today, hit publish, done. It would also normally, we don't have an actual sidebar here, but a lot of times there's a sidebar that will have your categories. It'll have maybe an archive, says, look at what I wrote in February, March, April. All that stuff is also automatically handled by WordPress. You don't have to go in and change those links or anything like that. It just happens automatically. And so that's kind of the power of WordPress. So it's very, very basic, but we took that HTML website and we WordPressified it. So everything on here we can now change inside the WordPress dashboard without having to know any code at all. See if the links work. Yep, the links work. So there's more stuff you can do. If you notice, you click on this and it looks exactly the same. That might be fine, but if you imagine, like before those posts were really long, you probably don't want all the code, or I'm sorry, all the entire blog post of every single one of your blog posts to show up on the main page, right? You typically just have a little excerpt of it, and then when you click on that post, then it shows you all the content. I don't have an example of that code here, but that also is, you guessed it, the excerpt. That's what the little PHP thing is. You put that in there, in that loop that we put, instead of where it says the content. If you change that to excerpt, then it'll only show the first, I forget, 100 and some odd characters of your blog post. And then when you build your blog post page, you would put the content instead, because obviously once they go to your blog post, you want them to see all the content. So that is probably a lesson for another day. When you look at a real WordPress theme, you'll see a lot more files than this. Right now, every single page or post you look at on our website, it's going to look at the index.php file to figure out how to handle it, which means it's going to see this, the content, and it's going to dump all the content. Everything's going to look the same on every single page. Well, WordPress has a sort of file hierarchy that it goes by. So for instance, if I were to create another file called page.php and I change the code around a little bit, WordPress would automatically start looking at page.php to render stuff instead of index.html. If you add front-page.php, then it'll look at that page only for your front page, and it'll look at page.php for all the other pages. And if you create one called single.php, that's what it'll look like for rendering your blog posts. So that's how you have control over how different things look. So for instance, you would change this probably to excerpt for your main page, and then when you create single.php, you would put the content. So that way when you're looking at your main page, you see just the excerpt, but when you look at an actual individual blog post, you'll see the entire content, little things like that. So there's a whole hierarchy where basically it says, WordPress says, I'm going to use index.php to render this, unless there's a page.php, then I'll use that. Or if there's a single.php, I'll use that for post. It knows all that stuff automatically, so when you figure that out, it makes it a lot easier to build your theme. When you know what file is going to use when, it makes it a lot easier. So like I mentioned, if you have a front page.php, when you come into your settings here, where's settings? I can't read. Settings and reading. We have this option right here to make your home page. Default, your home page is your latest posts. So when you're on your main page, you just see a list of all your posts. Well, that's cool if you're running a blog, but maybe you're not running a blog and that's not what you want people to see when they come to your website. So you can change the home page to a static page and you can choose one of your pages. If you do that, if you have that setting the way it is and you change and you add the front page.php, then it will use that file to render your landing page. And it'll use page.php or index.html for all the other pages. So that's why it's important to know that file hierarchy, when it's going to use what files and where, so you can have a lot more control. Let's see. The only other thing that I should probably show you, since we still have time anyways, is the header. You'll notice we technically have a header. All this is considered the header really, but it's all on the same index.php file. That's typically not how WordPress websites work. They typically actually have a separate file for the header, a separate file for the footer, and you just call that information in the index file. And that's super easy. Again, it's just one little line of code. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the index. Everything up here before body, actually everything right here, we want the menu. Okay, everything all the way down to the menu, I'm actually going to cut it out. Save.
Shouldn't you like copy it
before you cut it out? Code. Now I'm going to create a file. And I'm going to call it header.php. I'm going to edit it and hope that my clipboard still has that code. Boom. Save. And then I just have to, where is it? Of course. I think it's it's just get header. Yeah, it's just really simple. So we come back to the index, and where all that header information was, we're just going to go question mark PHP get header. Save. Did I save my header file? I think I did. And assuming I didn't screw up. Perfect. So nothing looks different, and it shouldn't. But technically what's going on is all this information up here is in that header.php file, and our index file is just going and looking for it, taking that content and sticking it where it belongs. And we do the same thing for the footer. We'll just go all the way to the bottom to this last HTML tag, come all the way up here. We're going to cut this, and while I'm here, I'm just going to go PHP get footer. Is it underscore or dash? It's underscore. And I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to create a new file just like we did for the header, but I'm going to call it footer.php. Paste that in, save it. And
So on this, when you cut the content out, it was saved automatically until you pasted it.
yeah, I just used Control X.
Oh, okay, I didn't. All right.
So again, it didn't change, and it shouldn't change on the front end. But now we technically have. We're actually looking at 3 different files right now. All this and everything's being rendered by index.php, but it's pulling this information from header.php and it's pulling this information from footer.php. And the cool thing about that, earlier I mentioned that you have different files for different situations. So let's say you do have a front page.php, so that's going to render your landing page, and then you just have a page.php, or you're just using index.php for all the other pages. You can create multiple headers, and you can call them wherever you want. So this is the default. This will pull from the file called header.php, but you can create a file called, I forget what the exact syntax is, but if you call like header-custom.php, then you come in here and you just type the word custom inside there, it will now pull from that header.php file. So you can have 3, 4, 100 different headers, and you can call them wherever you want on whatever page you want. And you can do the same thing with footer. And that's all just making it more and more dynamic and making it so you don't have to do any actual code editing. But I believe that's pretty much all I had. Does anybody have any questions about, you can ask questions about this, or if you just have any questions about WordPress in general and why would somebody use WordPress versus something else?
Why would anyone want to do this?
Okay, so you wouldn't. The reason you wouldn't want to do this is because, like I mentioned before, I don't actually know PHP yet. So the biggest advantage of going out and buying a nice theme, $50, $100, is whoever developed that theme is going to be maintaining that theme and updating it every so often. If there's some sort of security breach that comes up and everybody in the community learns about it and they make the change and they update it, then you update your theme, then you should be good to go. If you do this, it's all on you. You need to become a PHP WordPress security expert, and you need to keep up on that crap, and you need to be updating your own theme to meet all the current security standards and everything. And so you wouldn't do this unless you actually are trying to be a WordPress developer and you want to develop themes and you want to sell them and try to make money off of it. That's really the only reason you would do anything like what we're doing here. Typically what you would do is you would just download a theme that you like and use that. And when you're doing that, you want to check for